My name is Caroline Gaiduma. I see myself as a student of life because Carol is a journey that is still unfolding. I started from a place of darkness, from my state of unconsciousness. It led me to the darkest pit I've ever been in. I suffered depression, tried to commit suicide several times. But then at that dark point is when I asked myself, who am I? And it's been a journey unfolding every single day. Who I thought I was yesterday has changed to who I am.
Most people know me by Dana Hakasa. I was actually baptized Dana Hakasa through the church, which right now is, I'm not really following the church right now, but it has been a background and a foundation for me.
My spiritual journey is quite interesting. It began like about maybe 6 years ago, but not really 6 years ago. It began when my mother died. She died in 2012. And before she died, she was unwell for a while, about maybe 7 years or so. And we were looking for healing for her, healing. And there's no Christian church we did not go to. You know, the Pentecostals, how they say they'll pray for you and you'll get better. And we visited all these pastors and churches so that they can pray for my mother to get better, because we believed in this. This is the way we've grown up and this is the way we were taught.
The starting point of my journey of awakening was triggered by a sense of being lost. And I like to say that I actually succeeded in killing myself, because there were so many things I thought that I was, and issues happened in my life that I lost a lot of that. I lost a job that I had totally identified with. I lost a business that I had started and imagined that it would take me to financial freedom. At some point I lost my son, and so I was like, anybody who was calling me by that name, I didn't know how to respond to that. At some point I had lost my marriage. So every single thing that I identified as was taken away from me.
I think when I was small, I've always been very curious about the supernatural, magical stuff. But growing up with my family background, they really never appreciated it. So I was always told to hush down and keep it down and not talk about magic, that is taboo, it's witchcraft and all that kind of stuff.
It's been a slow journey where my husband is a staunch Catholic and he's wondering what I'm telling his children about that God is God is everywhere and in our hearts. But it is baby steps where my family and my husband is concerned. I speak to my children. I have an 18-year-old and 15-year-old. They quite understand these things. Even the small one who is 11, they'll understand. And I speak to them and I tell them, you speak to your angels. You have guardian angels. You have teachers. You have guides who speak to them. They will hear you. I actually even tell them, speak to Shosho. Shosho is right there. They look at me and tell me, Mommy, you're being creepy. You really are now being creepy. Stop talking about that. I say, yeah, she's here. She's with us in spirit. You may not see her, but speak to them. Yeah, and speak to God.
Somewhere, let's say about 15 years ago, 15 years ago, I just really had this meltdown, like a breakdown. I was going through so much with my family, with school. I sat down and I called out and I thought to myself, what am I doing? And where is this God that I've been praying to all this time? And where is he? Why is he not doing anything? So I actually rejected God. I said, no, there's no God, and forgot about it, and I don't want anything to do with God. And I became an atheist, and I decided to start on that path. But somehow I was being called back. Something in me was just being called back. So my dad, one day he called me, he heard about my dramas and what I was going through and wanted to talk to me. He gave me this book called Conversations with God, and I read it. I was a bit skeptic about it, but I read it and it kind of resonated with me. I felt that maybe this is a God that I want to know. And so that began my spiritual journey with Donald Walsh. Love him.
The question that I remember, the first question that I was asked is, what color is Jesus?
And for me, I thought, what does that matter? What color is he? What matters is what he came and what he did, and I was very cognizant that I had never asked myself that question. So after that night, then the next day, I think I just started to ask myself, enyewe, or what does this mean? What does this question mean? And why is it disturbing me? Why is the question disturbing me? So that was the beginning for me for what I think was my awakening.
I really don't know when it really began, because I remember from as being very, very young, really seeking for God. And because the only place I knew was the church, I would go there and try to listen as much as I could in Sunday school. And I tried to follow the footsteps that I was told by my mother, by the teachers. But I never really felt that I was home. And I continued like that in life. But there's a point at which I stopped going to church, I guess as every teenager does at some point. Got married, and my relationships didn't work. I just had issues with the relationships. My marriage broke down, and that is when I decided to go and do a counseling psychology course.
My name is Wamoyo Gaderu. I am a public sector governance advisor. That's what I've done for the last, say, 20 years, 15, 20 years, which basically means I do management for the public sector. I'm not doing as much of it now because I want to do more of what I call spiritual development work, which has knowledge which has changed my life for in the last 6 years. About 2012, while I'd been working on a business I wanted to set up for 1 year, put out all my savings for that business. Basically, I ended up in a situation with no money. I mean, no money. And it dawned on me, I had to go back. I had to pack up my flat and go back to my mom's house. And nothing I knew could explain my situation, or could explain it, or even could show me the way out. And anything that I could think about my situation was basically catastrophic. I mean, how does one explain how I'm a leading governance advisor, not just in this country, but in the region? How could I explain that I had no money to even pay rent?
One time I remember when I was going through some of these things I would find on the internet, and it occurred to me, hey, this is what we've been told is New Age in the church, and we should keep away from it. And at first I was in shock. I was like, oh my God, this is what we've been told to keep away from. But then immediately another thought came, but this is what has helped me become who I am today, become this forgiving, self-loving person who actually loves people more than I used to before. I'm not going to let it go. It's too good for me. I cannot let it go.
I remember praying a prayer, God help me. I've only prayed that prayer once or twice in my life. And I prayed the prayer and then walked to my library, to my books, looked at the bookshelves, which I usually do, like to pick a book that suits my mood. And I picked Eckhart Tolle's book. I had read the book before and I didn't understand it. But this time, it made absolute sense. And basically, I began to learn from that moment that I wasn't my thoughts, I wasn't my concept of me, which was my concept of me was this intellectual governance advisor, whatever, these mental ideas we have of ourselves. I wasn't that. What I was basically spirit that is always in the present moment.
I came back from Parliament. Parliament was really an awakening for me. The need that actually nourished my spirit to know the next step I was being prepared for is really come back and share the love that I experienced. I've never felt a love like that, like in Parliament, where there were people from all over the world, over 10,000 people. And there, with all our differences, yet all that came through was love. And in the midst of the world that we are in today, where religion has brought a lot of animosity, there was none of that. We just embraced each other with love. And that made something come alive in me. And I knew that was time for me to go and bring the same back home.
I remember praying and asking to meet people. Yeah, because there's a point at which I got and I felt very lonely, and I felt I need to share with others. And now, yes, there are many Kenyans who are coming up who have found that religion per se is not working, and there has to be more. Yes, and now I have quite a group who we support each other, and it's quite exciting, and I'm happy. And I'm looking forward to when most of our Kenyans are going to be able to see this, to be able to have their own way of being a spiritual person, seeking spirituality, their own way that actually works and meets their own inner needs. Yeah.
As Africans, art is not something that we did. We didn't sit down and then say, I'm going to make art. It was an after effect of something that it was a residue of what we had already done. So for example, you go to the shamba, you go to harvest something, and then you break out into song, and then in the middle of the song then a dance comes through, and then that looks like art, but it wasn't art. We didn't set out to make art. When you looked at a stool that you're sitting down on, right? You're sitting down there and you're feeling the earth has supported you, and so you decide to make the stool in the likeness of the power that you're feeling. That wasn't art, that was spirituality, you know. So I think that Africans are not artists. We don't make art, we make magic. We're magicians. Art is a residue of who we are and how we live life. Yeah, so Africans are not artists, Africans are magicians.